greetings, and welcome to another episode of African News Review. I'm your host, Adesoji Iginla, and with me, as usual, are two brilliant minds. We'll start with the lady. She needs no further introduction, but introduce I will. She is Fubara Eneli Esquire, host, Rethinking Freedom, and co-host of Women and Resistance. How are you, sister?
Doing wonderful. Thank you for having me today. How are
Oh,
you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm fine. I'm fine. Looking forward to, doing this again. The comrade. What
Yes,
else
sir.
is there to be? What else is there to be said? Journalist, broadcaster, Black Star News, author, manufacturing hate. The man is everywhere, and speaking to everyone, regardless of just trying to educate everyone out there with regards to where their head should be.
Thank you,
And
sir.
you're welcome. You're welcome. So, as is custom now, I'll begin with you, comrade. News where you at? What's the major news story where you at?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, please.
Well, I like, what I like about this president, Donald Trump, is he keeps revealing himself, by his own words and his own behavior. So people don't even need to debate what type of person this is,
mm, mm,
because anybody, when you're debating, sometimes when somebody does not want to give and take, those are
mhm,
impossible debates. So the solution is to listen to
mm,
what he says and
mm,
how he conducts himself.
mm.
So there were two very revealing moments this past week.
Okay.
Actually, three or four, but let me focus on two. And regarding the same topic.
He said two or
So
four, three or four.
no, wait, and you because you're going to realize, oh yeah, you saw that too. So when he was interviewed on
Mm,
Fox, he went into the studio regarding the killing of Charlie Kirk,
okay.
and he was asked how he felt, or
What his
he
takeaway
said,
was?
I don't even remember what he said because they pivot very quickly to this beautiful ballroom that we're building at the White House.
Oh yeah,
They've
that
been
was.
trying to do this for decades. Nobody has succeeded. And we're building this beautiful, it's almost done. When the Chinese visitors, the president comes, they have to put him in an outside tent. It's going to be fabulous. Oh, yeah. And then, by the way, Charlie, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, my God. And then he was asked, as he was leaving, I think, the White House lawn, going to board the helicopter, right?
Yep.
And he was asked, how is he dealing with this, devastating killing? And he said, "Oh, I'm handling it." And then, oh, by the way, we're about to finish building beautiful, beautiful ballroom. You see? So if anybody had any doubt that this is a narcissist to the max, with no compassion, even for alleged friends, because you cannot be a narcissist of that extreme level and
Mm,
actually have any friends. Because to have friends, obviously, it takes a lot. You have to invest, emotional interest
mhm.
before somebody can really become a friend.
Yeah.
So for you to just dismiss a question about how you're, dealing with the situation and
Wow.
consistently, not this one time, at least three or four instances, jump back to that beautiful ballroom that you're constructing. Need I say any more? So,
Mm, mm,
to know the man, just listen to him. Let him reveal himself in his own words. So there's no need for debate. So that to
mm.
me is what I wanted to focus on. Over to you,
Okay.
sister.
Well, let me mark the day and time because this will probably never happen again. I think that Donald Trump did the correct thing, though. His response was absolutely what it should have been because Charlie
Mhm.
Kirk said he doesn't believe in the word empathy. He said he doesn't believe in empathy. It's wokeness. It's something that people are
Mhm.
manufacturing now. And so the fact that the president, felon in chief of the United States of America, who, by the way, Charlie Kirk had been calling for the Epstein files to be released, and they happened to vote on that in the House mere
Don't get us in
hours.
trouble. Don't get us in
Mere
trouble.
hours after he was killed, murdered live. So it's not like they weren't aware of it, but business must go on. They didn't stop and have a moment or a day of silence and let's do this vote some other day, because it's kind of crass to vote on this right after our beloved prince, whatever, has passed away. But anyway, I say all of that to say that the fact that he showed no empathy, I think, was in line with the wishes of Charlie Kirk, who showed no empathy for George Floyd and said he doesn't believe in the word. So he probably handled it the way that Charlie Kirk would want it handled. So bravo to the felon in chief.
Okay. Yep. So for Londoners, it was Unite the Kingdom March that happened yesterday. It pulled in 110,000.
The colonial kingdom, or which? Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Like we would say, when the question is posed, I want to defend my country. The question you ask them is which one, because there are 4 in 1. So you have to determine which one you're talking about. So there were 110 people, according to guesstimates. 110,000 guesstimates.
110 or 110,000?
110,000. Yeah. There were ironies in, that bled into the match that just sort of shows you how the baselessness of whatever it is they want to achieve. So the major goal is to stop the so-called Islamization of the United Kingdom. Sister even saw some of what I'm about to say now, where you had the same people that wanted Islamization to stopping around to have their curries from Pakistanis and Bengalis. That's one.
Oh, they don't mind that.
Then two,
mind that. I mean, people here go to basketball games, they cheer black players, and then they want to go out and lynch them immediately. Right? Go ahead.
So the more insidious aspect of it was a South African resident in the United States that called in via video link to say they should go and dissolve parliament and take their country back. It was the icing on the whole cake. To anybody here, it's a question of what do you understand about the said country you're talking about? But it shows how white supremacy bleeds across borders, but yet people want to be nativist. That, I'm this, I'm that, I'm an American, I'm a Brit. But here is global capital, just following capital around, regardless of borders. So I just wanted to highlight that very fact. And so, speaking of flows, urban flows, where our first story comes from Radio Deutsche Welle, and it's titled Deaths, Dollars, and Disputes. And it's talking about the recently commissioned Great Ethiopia Renaissance Dam, the mega dam. And the story is filed in by Privilege Masaviri. And she says, did 15,000 people die during GED's construction? Deutsche Welle unpacks some key facts about the Ethiopia mega dam, including why Addis Ababa does not recognize the 1959 Nile Water Treaty between Egypt and Sudan. And there is a picture of the dam. And I just want to take your eyes to this part. we did hear 15,000 were claimed to have met their demise on the project. Former GERD Chief Project Manager Sinegwe Bekele stood out as one of the prominent figures who died under unclear circumstances, with speculation that he might have been assassinated in connection with the dam's construction in July 2018. He was found with a bullet wound in his car in central Addis Ababa. The dam commissioning in September 9 is expected to draw dignitaries, it's happened anyway, from across the continent, with invitations extended to Nile Basin countries and others, but Egypt and Sudan's attendance is uncertain. The mega hydro dam is expected to double Ethiopia's electricity output. So the question is, what is your take with regards to this particular headline, or your general take on the article itself, vis-a-vis reporting what would ordinarily be a scientific achievement when it comes to infrastructure in Africa? Sister, you want to go first?
No, I'm going to defer to our comrade here today.
Okay. All right. So I have maybe 2 or 3 points on this. First of all, it's a major construction achievement, right?
Yeah.
Because I think it's going to generate power worth like 5,000 plus megawatts.
Yeah.
And right now, one of the biggest ones we have on the continent is Aswan Dam in Egypt itself, which generates 2,100 megawatts. So this one is more than double that of Egypt. And if you look at the one in Ghana, I think that one is 1,000 megawatts. And that is a huge, project in West Africa. So this one is 5 times Ghana. So it's a major achievement.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a story that you cannot ignore, because obviously it becomes a lead if it's true that 15,000 people died in the construction. Because this harkens back to the era of colonial type constructions. When they built that railway, for example, from the coast to Brazzaville, when the French built it with conscripted labor. More than 14,000 people died. 14,000 Africans died building that. So if this is true, and it seems to be true, because if you look at the minister's answer, the Minister of Energy and Water, he says, on the point about the numbers that are being quoted, the question is wrong, and the answer also wrong. For information on this, you have to go to relevant institutions. A whole minister whose brief includes the project is saying go to the institution. So he's saying nobody is allowed to talk about this, except maybe the prime minister. But much more importantly, he's not saying ridiculous. 15,000 people died. That's nonsense, outrage. And we can disprove that. He did not say that. So that to me confirms that whether it's 15,000 or not, thousands of people must have died in the construction of this project. And we're in the 21st century. Do we still really need to sacrifice so many human lives in building a major project like this, which of course is laudable and welcome? It's going to provide energy to build the economy. But so something needs to be followed up on that particular story. How did they die? Were there no safety measures at all? Were there no safety measures show that the water was not being held back and people were just drowned? How did they die? That's a question that's not addressed in the article either. And also then finally, I want to say there's one other thing I like about, not so much the story, but what was accomplished by Ethiopians. They raised all the money domestically. You see? So Africans can mobilize when they believe in something. People were donating, people were buying bonds. $5 billion, that's unheard of. Ordinarily, that would be a lead in itself. Africans raised $5 billion domestically to build major dams. So my suggestion would have been to have done it as 2 separate stories. The tragedy part, that should be a standalone story. The fact that Africans can mobilize $5 billion, because now the World Bank and IMF are going to become worried. They refused to provide the money, and it turned out to have been a blessing for Ethiopia.
Mm, mm.
I absolutely agree with you, and you raised most of the points that I was going to point to. What I was most excited about that article is the fact that we did it ourselves, and so that becomes a blueprint. Well, not even a blueprint, because we've had this blueprint before, but it becomes a reminder of what we are capable of doing when we decide to do it.
Yep.
So whenever I hear all these African leaders talking about, we just on Women in Resistance did a whole program on Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, and her whole focus was on how to go get aid from her friends in the IMF and the World Bank and so on and so forth. And so I really appreciated the fact that the Ethiopians, yes, maybe it took longer, who knows, but we own this and we have that pride. And if we did it one time, we can do it again and maybe do it better. Having said that, I agree with you that I was going back to research, okay, who exactly wrote this story and what were they trying to accomplish? Because when you throw out 15,000 people died, but you give us no clue as to how you came up with that number or how they died. Was there one major explosion where, something took out so many people or what? Yes, that was problematic. It was like, maybe they're scared of telling the truth. I don't know. But obviously the response from the minister was a little suspect. The other thing, though, that really stood out for me in this article is understanding why it came to this and understanding why Sudan and Egypt will possibly not show up for this for this grand opening that many other countries up north, upstream are going to be celebrating as a feat for the area. And it comes back again to the hand of colonialism and neocolonialism in the affairs of Africa. So they reference really quickly the 1959 Nile Water Treaty. And of course, at that treaty, you have a conversation about water that impacts so many different countries, but you end up having the conversation. The only people invited to the table are Egypt and Sudan. And this was under Nasser and Sudan's Prime Minister Ibrahim Aboud. And then the treaty, because Egypt had the backing of some colonial masters, the treaty says, hey, altogether there's 74 billion cubic meters. We're going to give 55.5 billion cubic meters to Egypt. We're going to give 18.5 to Sudan, and the rest of you kick rocks. And they're supposed to just say, oh, yeah, that's fine. And, we'll just live with it. So despite Ethiopia contributing about 85% of the Nile waters via the Blue Nile, they were closed out of that treaty. And this is the way that the colonizers keep us at each other's throats. And we allow them.
Yep.
Because it's like you're having a quarrel with your brother or sister, and you go bring someone in who does not have the best interest of either one of you to mediate or to be the one who draws up the terms. And all they do is create long-term enmity between us. And so obviously
that's a big point. I agree.
That treaty gave Egypt veto power over any upstream projects. It's ridiculous. So I'm happy for Ethiopia, and I'm happy for the example that they're setting. And I hope that Africans see this as a Pan-Africanist accomplishment, and that we come out and we celebrate this big time.
Very good. I'm glad you mentioned that very critical point. In fact, you read the part about the apparent assassination of the chief of the entire project, Mr. Bekele.
Yes.
I would not be surprised if the people who eliminated him were from outside Ethiopia. Since I have no proof or evidence, let me leave it like that.
Exactly, because when they started this project, Egypt was understandably extremely upset and said they would do whatever they
Egypt
could
wanted to go to war.
Exactly.
Yep, they
So
wanted to go to
even
war.
when you say
Right.
15,000 people died, help me understand, was it because of negligence on the part of Ethiopia, or was it because there were actually some kind of saboteur work that was going on that created, issues for the workers? But give us more information.
Right. Right.
I mean, I would just say, on that story, I would just say, you're right when you said Egypt took exception to the idea of Ethiopia constructing the dam. One was part of the negotiation was you are going to allow a certain amount of water in line with that treaty, which if that were to happen, Ethiopia would effectively not be able to build a dam because you need X amount of volume of water to generate the electricity you need. So it was like, no, we're going to have to go ahead. And when they mentioned the fact that nobody outside of Ethiopia invested in it, World Bank and the IMF were backing Egypt. That's why they didn't provide the funds. So again, the new colonial hand of external influence over the affairs of Africa. You continue to see it on a day. And kudos to Ethiopia for saying no and have, to their credit, achieved something worthwhile. And it's a monument of what can happen when Africans
and I believe
decide
they're gonna be providing electricity to some of the countries upstream
nearby,
from them as well.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, this is a great thing.
Yes. And so that said, another story cropped up in The Guardian this week, and it's for one of our worthy comrades who has long left us, but for some, he is still very much around. And the story reads from The Guardian that South Africa is to reopen Steve Biko's inquest 48 years after death in death custody. Death of anti-apartheid activist in 1977 after police beat him into a coma sparked outrage across the world. And South Africa's prosecutors will reopen the inquest into the death of prominent anti-apartheid activist Steve Biko nearly 50 years after he died in police custody. Biko, the founder of South Africa's Black Consciousness Movement, died in a police cell in 1977, just age 30, after being beaten into a coma by the police who had arrested him nearly a month earlier. The main goal of reopening the inquest is to lay before the court evidence that will enable the court to make a finding as to whether the death was brought about by any act or omission, which prima facie involves amounts to an offense on the part of any person, the National Prosecuting Authority said on Wednesday. So, ladies and gentlemen, what's your take on this?
You should leave that article back on there because I was getting confused.
Okay.
No, seriously.
Let me share that.
Please put it back up. Okay. I don't know who wrote this. They should go back to Comrade Milton Allimadi's class, because on the one hand, where you are.
Okay.
On the one hand, they said Biko, the founder of South Africa's Black Consciousness Movement, died in a prison cell in 1977, age just 30, after being beaten into a coma.
Yeah.
So it seems like they've already come to a conclusion that he was beaten into a coma, right? And it says by police. So what are we investigating again? Because if you keep going down, then it talks about, I mean, unless we're investigating the corruption of the National Prosecuting Authority, unless we're going to talk about how ineffective the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was.
Oh,
right. No, she's right, 100%.
In your article, you've already concluded that he was beaten into a coma. So later, when you now say he hit his head and then no one was prosecuted for the death, and of course, just on a very basic level, as an attorney myself, I'm just like, is anybody alive who did this?
There would have to be.
I think they say Two of them, I said, they said.
Well,
Yeah.
2 of them are still alive?
I think they said
Yes.
2. Yeah,
Okay.
2 of them. Mhm.
Yeah, because I would, yeah, good. I'm glad you caught that, because I'm like, okay, who again are we prosecuting? So anyway, just looking at this, I'm glad. And listen, anytime that we attempt to write the record of the injustices that have been done against us, I absolutely welcome that. And so, to the extent that this will bring forth anything that, without a shadow of a doubt, provides the evidence of what we already know to be true, that a 30-year-old man in good health did just suddenly beat himself up and then fall into a coma. I welcome that. But at the same time, I think that it's unfortunate that our people have to continue to fight for any modicum of justice. And there's no justice because he's not coming back. But just in terms of even getting to the truth. And therein lies some of the concerns that I did have with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, both here in South Africa and then the one they did in Liberia as well. I feel like it's more of a way to just sweep things under the rug and say we're starting over, as opposed to really correct wrongs. And when you don't correct the wrongs, they come back to hunt you. Just like the fact that America never effectively dealt with its Confederates.
Yep.
They've never stopped fighting a civil war, which is why we are where we are today. You got to address these things up front.
Yep. And
so the whole question had always been justice versus reconciliation, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we're still talking about it today. So the key questions in this story, you're right. First of all, it's but you know, primarily the editors are responsible for stuff like this. The editors should have said exactly what you said. You see, you know, it means, you know, you don't have good editors if they allow a story to run like that, or they want it to run like that. You see, and so it's most likely they want it to run like that. And there are a couple of questions. Why are they visiting this issue 29 years later after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission? 49 years after Biko was murdered.
Yeah.
You know? So obviously it's for political reasons. This is something, because the people who killed him were not granted amnesty. Part of the whole thing with the Truth and Reconciliation was if you testify, you tell the truth, no matter how barbaric the crime was, you would be given amnesty. But these folks had apparently lied, you know, and that's why they did not get amnesty. So they never got amnesty. So why are you looking into it now, today, 29 years later? Might it be because, you know, last year, the ANC did very poorly in the election, and the white party did very well, and now you're worried about the next election, and now you're throwing some bones, you know, to the masses, when in fact you should be addressing the issue of economic disparity. You should be addressing the issue of the fact that the 8% Europeans still control 72% of the land. So it seems to me that this is like throwing some crumbs to the masses. Of course, it's a very emotional thing. So if they're going to, and even if the guys are in their 80s now, if they get convicted, I'm sure people will still celebrate because their crime was just so brutal, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, this to me sounds like pacifying. You know, you're not addressing the serious issues. You said, you know, the sister said, we're still having the same conversation in the United States because the issue of the Confederacy was never properly resolved. South Africa, exact same thing. You know, they didn't even touch it, right? And people blame Mandela and all that. I'm not in that group. I think the guy did what he could do. The guy served 27 years. You need to have the young bones push that, you know, that fight. I don't blame him for taking a deal and coming out and living for a few years outside behind bars and even being president for one term and then stepping down. The alternative was that he was going to definitely die behind bars. I would have probably done the same thing. I think they need to continue the fight for the land and for economic justice as well, because the European population still control 90% of the economy as well, in cahoots with people like Ramaphosa, the president, who's a billionaire in US dollars, not South African rand. So it seems to me that this is very obvious. He's just throwing some crumbs to the masses, you know.
Well, since they're throwing crumbs, if any of the descendants of Steve Biko happen to hear this, once they are done with whatever investigation they're doing, now sue the men and their estate and their descendants.
Yep.
Courts, and at least get some financial resources for the loss of.
No, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, that's what
I love that because that could actually open a pattern. There are many, many more there who deserve to be sued also. So that actually is an indirect way to tackle some of the reparations in South Africa. I love that idea a lot.
Man, shoot, I'll move to South Africa and get admitted to the bar to fight that battle.
No, really. Why should they be benefiting from the assets, that were derived from blood?
Yes.
At least if they were politically savvy, right? They should have said, okay, apartheid, we did wrong. We apologize. We're going to give you a timeline. Within 10 years, you don't even have to do it overnight. Within 10 years, the land would have been redistributed to reflect the population of the country. Boom, you have reconciliation right there on the spot. Africans are very patient people. They are, because otherwise, can you imagine a minority African population going to England, taking over the land, committing genocide, and then years later, they end African apartheid in England. The Africans would still control 72% of the land. 30 years later, you're out of your mind. It would never happen. Only Africans can tolerate that type of inequity. Sometimes we are too close to our humanity, but there's a limit,
Wow. Speaking of speaking of limits, what's the limit that Ghana is going to break as it plays host to deportees from the United States? For that story, we go to Reuters, and it reads, Ghana agrees to accept West African deported from the US, president said. Ghana has agreed to accept West African nationals deported from the United States, and 14 have already arrived in the country, President John Dramani Mahama told reporters late Wednesday. United States Donald Trump has taken a hardline approach towards immigration, aiming to deport millions of immigrants who are in the US illegally and seeking to ramp up removals to third countries. So it goes on, a group of countries, including Nigerians, a group of deportees, including Nigerians, and one Gambians have already arrived in Ghana, and the government facilitated their return would facilitate their return to their home countries, Mahama had said at a press conference. So what's your take on this? I mean, I know when I initially saw the story, I know what my take was, but I'm hoping to hear what yours is. We'll start with Can you hear me?
Paused. Who are you starting with?
I'm starting with you because you're.
He wants the legal brains here.
First and foremost, this is the third or fourth story we've done on these African countries accepting deportees from the United States of America. So clearly there is a really strong effort to put pressure on these African nations to become dumping grounds for the United States of America. Now we already take their waste. We already, in terms of garbage, we already take their discarded um, um, pharmaceuticals. They already dump their food that they can't sell. And now to appease his base and to appear to be doing what the white nationalists, I guess, the fascists want, he's looking for all kinds of measures to get as many people out of the country as possible, as many Black and brown people out of the country as possible. And because there are quite a few people who were part of Project 2025 and who are now in senior administration in his administration, who studied Africans, who studied how we resist, this is what they did their dissertation topics on. I think these people have really tried to figure out what the pain points are and how to manipulate us the most. So when you look at what's happening with this Ghanaian president, first of all, didn't he just get elected?
Yeah, he did.
I think he got elected this year. It's like with everything that's going on in your country, like, what are you getting from this? Because again, the parliament was not part of this decision. These are unilateral decisions that these heads of state are making, but that encumber their entire countries. But what's really unique about this particular one is you have...
That's a very important point. That's a very important point.
You have ECOWAS, right? And with ECOWAS, what they've agreed on is that these West African states, that they their citizens can move back and forth to each other's countries for 90 and spend 90 days in whatever country without a visa, right? And then go back to their country. So if you have countries like Nigeria who are refusing to take any deportees, but you can get Ghana or any of the other countries in the ECOWAS to accept
around
them,
Nigeria,
then now that whole ECOWAS deal comes into play, because once they are in Ghana or in any other West African country, then the question is, are the Ghanaians going to house them and imprison them for life? Or are they going to release them? And once they're released, they're going to be able to go back to their country. So is it a way to get around the sovereignty of countries that are saying, no, you don't just get to deport people and force us to take them? But I'll be interested to hear your take on it, Comrade Milton.
No, it is. You've touched on all the critical topics. So Ghana says that they have in fact returned them to their countries. So I'm thinking, okay, so if I am, Nigerian or from West Africa, I would probably prefer to be deported to West Africa and not to Vietnam or Cambodia or somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, the whole issue of some people have legitimate fears of persecution, torture, and even killing.
Yes.
So how do you address that issue? You're going to return me to Nigeria if I have a legitimate basis for why I was seeking political asylum? That's very problematic. So now Ghana becomes involved in bypassing that very serious concern. And unless Ghana is saying, okay, we'll investigate. If these are legitimate, we will also grant, political asylum. So you're opening up a can of worms, and we don't know which direction this is really going to take. And then, as I was reading another article, actually, remember when the 5 African presidents were invited in the White House?
Yeah.
And then some people were saying, wait, okay, we know the guy wants, Africa's resources. Is that the only thing that he's inviting them there for, to give them this high grand treatment? And then, but also it turns out that he was also pressuring each and every one of them to accept deportees as well. And that was that never came out in the reporting at that time, but that has subsequently come out as well now too.
Yeah, but there was a story before then of Nigeria refusing to take any deportees based on the international agreed ways of treating deportees, and to which United States, well, then changed their visa rules with regards to Nigeria, reduce the length of the visa from 5 years to 2, then to 6 months.
Yeah.
And no student visas, all of that nonsense, just because you refuse to take deportees. Maybe that's what Ghana cannot afford to do. So that's why Ghana, I'm, just looking out for Ghana here.
So here's the thing again, when we talk about our African countries, which really should just be one country, Ghana may not be able to afford to do it. Eswatini itself may not be able to afford to do it. But if we will come together, then we have this strong block that is so much harder to break. So the fact that we will not, we keep traveling again, like I said, and bringing outsiders into our business and negotiating with people who have a proven track record that they do not care about your well-being. And yet we will not talk to our neighbors. So this Ghanaian president, when he chose to do this, did he have a meeting with the other ECOWAS leaders? And they all sign off on this? No, he did it unilaterally. So I don't know when our leaders are going to learn, but I'm hoping sooner rather than later.
No, they will. They will. I think, young people are becoming much, much more intolerable. They can't tolerate this anymore. And I encourage them, wherever you can make the changes, because you're absolutely right. First of all, if we had a United States of Africa, the United States would not be deporting any African, because we have all the resources that the world needs, all the critical minerals. We'll just put them on a blacklist. We'll say you'll never get any more cobalt. You'll never get any more coltan. And the businesses, those CEOs of the tech companies who are being dined in the White House last week,
yes,
all of them would collectively come together and get rid of this president. There would never be any president elected in the United States that would treat Africa that way again if we were United States of Africa. Nobody, not China, not Europe.
You see how even small South Korea showed their muscle with this incident that happened in Georgia, where a Karen who's running for office decided to call ICE on the Hyundai plants that they were building. And South Korea is like, we're sending in a plane, we're going to take our own people. And good luck with that. And I think they are considering cutting their losses and not coming back, at least to those red states, to continue work.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And
so they're talking about a possible loss of 8,900 jobs as a result of that one move.
Wow.
Yeah.
Racism is expensive.
They're gonna F around and find out.
Talking about the country, the continent now looking out for its own citizens, we go for our final story from Reuters, and it reads, Africa. There's something about the story, but I'll let you go first before I say my thoughts. Africa feeding 20 million more children with school meals, World Food Program says. And it says government in sub-Saharan Africa has provided school meals to roughly 20 million extra children over the past 2 years. The World Food Program said on Wednesday, showing a move away from dependence on foreign aid and a strong commitment to education. The region saw the biggest rise in school feeding of any region by nearly a third to 87 million in 2024. Ethiopia, Rwanda, and even severely impoverished Madagascar and Chad all managed to feed 6 times as many over the period. Government investment in school meals signals a significant shift from reliance on foreign aid to organizing school meals as a strategic public investment in children's education and health, the report said. Over to you, sister. As a mother,
No, we're going to Comrade. Yeah, Comrade Milton is going first in this one. If you don't mind,
Sure,
sir.
no problem. No, absolutely, I don't. It's a big issue for me because,
Mm,
you know, as we know, Kwame Nkrumah warned about this, you know, that if
mm,
we are not food independent, we're going to surrender our political independence.
true.
And in his book, Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism. And this is exactly where we are today. So in spite of this story, the fact of the matter is Africa imports $35 billion to $40 billion worth of food every year. Just think about that. Money that could be going to schools, to hospitals, to clinics. It's just mind-boggling. So this story is of minor interest, you know, to me, in terms of what needs to be really done to resolve the situation. The story still is, while it says, okay, so some countries are doing better, 20 million extra children were fed in the last 2 years, it still tells at the same time that by 2030, 60% of the world's hungry people will be in Africa.
In Africa, yeah.
We're talking 307 million people. So in other words, the story itself is saying this 20 million, being able to feed 20 million extra children in 2 years is insignificant compared to the real problem that exists on the continent. It says so in the story, but it's just reworked it. You know, this could have been the lead itself. It could have been the headline, you know. In 4 years, 60% of the world's hunger will be in Africa. That, in fact, is the story right there, you see? So obviously there are a number of things. And it ties in with the whole, you know, dependency model. And it celebrates dependency because it says, quote, poor countries face falling aid from their rich counterparts. First of all, there are no such things as poor countries. These are exploited countries. You know, how can the countries that have more resources than the rich countries be referred to as quote unquote poor countries? That's nonsense. But it reinforces that unconscious, you know, propaganda narrative. Oh, but for the lack of generosity from the US, from the West, these countries would also be like us. Of course not. They are kept, unlike you in the West, by the mere fact that it's the resources that allow you to build your wealth. So your whole model is tied on keeping these countries dependent, keeping them hungry, and keeping them not industrialized so they can import your manufacturers, you know? So that's my take on this.
Thank you, brother, for that.
One point, actually. Let me just add one point, just to condemn the Africans. So while they have food shortages, people are hungry, people are starving, they're getting food aid sometimes from outside, they're always like celebrating their record production of coffee, tea, cotton, cocoa, flowers, things that people cannot eat. That is the other contradiction that we need to end by all means necessary in Africa.
I'm so glad that you brought it up because it dovetails with the point I was going to make is that from the research I've done, 60% of all arable land in the world is on the continent of Africa. We also know that we also know that we have the youngest population. So we have youth that can work. We have youth who are looking for work, right? So for us to have the land and to have the labor and not produce food for our own consumption is insanity. And let me tell you that see, it's going to be hard for many of us who are listening, watching this to really feel this at a gut level because perhaps you've never really experienced extreme hunger. Like at least here in the United States, you know, you can go to school and get food. Now, I have worked with young people who, like over the summer, in the summer programs that we ran, I would have extra food on Fridays so that they could take the food home, crackers and peanut butter and jelly and all of that, so that they could eat over the weekend as well. But many of us have not experienced the kind of hunger that we're talking about when we say a person is malnourished. So there is a school that I'm involved with in the land of my ancestors in Opobo in Nigeria. And that school has about 200 kids. And when I was looking at the schedule for the school, I said, why do you guys get out so early in the day? And they explained to me, the school can't afford to feed the kids. Quite a few of the kids don't have the resources to like pack a lunch and bring to school. So they let the kids out early compared to many other countries, so that they can go back to their families and figure out if they're breathing air or drinking water or actually going to eat any food. And I would love nothing more than to be able to provide one meal a day for those kids. But right now, there are just a few of us who are lending hands to this project. And first, we needed to secure the roof where there's rain coming in, and then get resources. And things. So we're gradually building up. We just replaced the ceilings there. But I would love to be able to, what we want to do is actually fence in some of the land that the school has, start a gardening project, but also be able to feed these kids once a day, and eventually from that garden, be able to feed them from there or sell or whatever.
Self-generate.
So bottom line is, these are not just articles that we read and then we move on. These are like real lives. And it's going to take us to be part of the solution. In whatever little ways that we can, but each person joining hands with another can make a difference.
Correct.
Right. No, we can do it because, first of all, I think the latest figure I saw, that the funds that Africans remit to the continent is between $90 to $100 billion now. This is, people just sending, funds back. So obviously we can rally over issues of education, issues of feeding. These are things that we need to do increasingly ourselves. I think we are underutilizing our potential and our powers.
I mean, I'm going to borrow your book in the last story we ran, where you said you have to indict the Africans. I'm going to indict the Kenyan president, William Ruto, Zambian president, Mnangagwa, the Zambian one, his name fails me now, and the Malawi president, who went to Putin about 2 years ago, asking him to allow Ukraine to be able to export grains to Africa. The sister said earlier that Africa, with some of the most arable land, and you added the fact that you're producing coffee, cocoa, and flowers, fresh flowers, that you cannot eat in order to buy what you need to eat. It's a crazy model.
It's inexcusable. It's inexcusable. You can't excuse that, for real.
I mean, it's sister that we do every week is to bring us the conscious mind to kind of think that sometimes the stories you see when you search Google, when you watch news, there's a story behind those headlines. And half of the time, even the so-called stories that are before you don't fully represent what it is the entire thing is about, whether it be the dam, the deportees, Steve Biko, and now talking about feeding kids. There is a story. There is a reason why Africans are unable to, really actualize their own destiny, because the so-called colonial model is still there. I bet kind of invisible, but it's still there. But that said, we'll continue to do this. I must thank my guests, Comrade Milton Allimadi, Sister Aya Fubara and Eneli Esquire, for joining me for this conversation, and hopefully for more conversations. I thank you, the viewers and listeners, in the course of the week, because you can download this on where you download your audio podcast. You can get it on any platform. And yes, until next time, I am Adesoji Iginla. And sister, any final thoughts?
We are all we have.
Mm.
We should not be spectators.
Yeah.
Everybody is capable of doing something to fight towards our liberation. Find your thing and commit to it.
Absolutely.
And brother?
A luta continua. Support this program. Subscribe. Donate. Just, build up this brother's platform.
Yes.
See you next week.
Yeah. Thank you. And from me, you will be hearing from me in the course of the week. And myself and Sister Aya will be looking at the lives and times of Misere Guthe Mugo. And that will be on Women and Resistance, 7 p.m. Eastern. Join us this Wednesday. And so, stay conscious, stay committed, and stay connected. Until next time, it's good night.